Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Hello, and thank you for tuning into the GSMC Relationship Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Giovanna. Thank you for tuning in today. It is really, really hot in my recording area right now. I have some plans in place to have a quieter space to record that isn't like a sauna. So right now I do have a fan going and a window open because it's close to unbearable if I, don't do all of those things. So I'm hoping the sound quality is as normal, but you might hear a fan in the background or a breeze blowing through because that's really the only thing that's getting me through. So on today's episode, though, we're going to be talking a little bit about friendships, really friends with benefits, and if two people of the opposite sex who are both heterosexual can be friends, and vice versa for queer people, so if like two gay people can be friends and all of that fun stuff. So to get into it, the first segment, we're going to be talking about friends with benefits. So friends with benefits are basically just friends who also come with sexual benefits as well. So it's a little bit better than, it's easier than having a full romantic relationship, but it's a little bit more than just a hookup. So with a hookup, though, you might have casual sex or somebody that, you don't really know. But with friends with benefits, it's a little bit more consistent. It's a little bit more intimate. But you don't have to go all the way to, having a relationship because that takes a lot of work and, it can be hard. Relationships can be hard sometimes. It's not always easy. And the best relationships, the most successful relationships, there's still going to be ups and downs, and there's still going to be problems that arise. Now, with having a friends with benefits relationship, it helps you be able to satisfy your sexual needs, but also not have the commitment of a relationship. Now, a relationship is based on two evaluative patterns. Praiseworthiness, which is positive appraisal of personal characteristics, and the other one is attractiveness. So an attraction to somebody's external appearance and not so much of the personal characteristics because, and that's really is going to be what makes up the emotional experience of romantic love. Now, the first one, which is going to be praiseworthiness, that is going to underline the friendship, and the second underlies the sexual relationship. And for romantic love and relationships where you're really working hard to be together, those two things are going to come together. And with genuine romantic love, it involves the caring and commitment of both people to at least try to keep the relationship going and to be happy in the relationship. And both contribute work and can bring something to the relationship that makes them both want to be there. So whether that be sexual, whether that be emotional, both are getting something out of the relationship and gaining something from the relationship. Now, with casual sex, basically, in addition to relationships of casual sex, friendship, and romantic love, the other one is going to be friends with benefits. And now it's interesting because people who are most likely to have friends with benefit relationships are going to be people in their 20s, and also people in an older group of people who are married and or have been in a monogamous relationship for a while and may not be getting the type of sexual experience that they need. They might not be getting the type of sexual attention that they want from their partner, so they will seek out a friends with benefits relationship outside of the marriage or outside of the long-term relationship. So 50% of people in their 20s have experienced a friends with benefits relationship, so it is really common among young people. And for FWBs or friends with benefits, the friendship is going to be non-exclusive, recurring sexual activities, or it doesn't have to be completely sexual activities. It could be just near sexual activities, and the benefits are going to be less deep than romantic love, but greater than what happens in just casual sex. And romantic love is going to involve relative weight, the same relative weight that does with a friends with benefits. So in a romantic relationship, you're going to be friends with the person, or at least I would hope you're going to be friends with the person you're with. But there's also going to be a greater emotional attachment. There's going to be, and it's also going to be more exclusive, if you're in a monogamous relationship, than with a friends with benefits. And the benefits of having benefits of having a friends with benefits relationship is that it's going to be more affectionate than just a one night stand. And so, you might trust the person a little bit more. The person that you're with in a friends with benefits relationship is probably going to understand your body a little bit more. And I remember reading that specifically women who have experienced one-night stands or have participated in one-night stands very rarely are sexually satisfied at the end of the experience. So a woman who has a friends with benefits relationship is going to possibly have a easier time climaxing and an easier time getting more from the sexual experience. So in regards to comparing friends with benefits to one-night stands, speaking specifically for heterosexual women, this might be a better opportunity and to be sexually satisfied while you're single, but being able to actually have good experiences with your partner. I don't know if I agree with this. I'm getting some of this information from a blog. It was written by Aaron Ben Zeff, who is the writer of In the Name of Love. Now, he has some very distinctive heteronormative views. Some I don't know if I necessarily agree with, but I guess I understand where he's coming from. But women are more likely to view, in a friends with benefits relationship, women are more likely to view gain benefits from the emotional side, and men are more likely to gain benefits from the sexual side. But like I said before, women are probably more likely to enjoy the sexual experience and actually be able to climax in a friends with benefits relationship because their person that they're with, it's going to be recurring sexual acts. So they're probably going to be more comfortable voicing what they want. Whereas in a hookup, it's hard talking about what you want want out of the sexual experience. It might be hard to say like what you like and what you're into and what is going to help you get there. Whereas with a friends with benefits, you are friends with this person. You do have a relationship outside of the sexual experience, and you're probably more likely to voice, how you want to be treated in bed and what is going to be the easiest way for you to enjoy the experience to the fullest. So I guess that's my argument against that. But I guess I can understand it. But I mean, a major reason that people like having a friends with benefits is the fear of commitment, because the boundaries of a friends with benefits relationship sometimes isn't really defined. Now, if you want to have a friends with benefits relationship that is successful, I would recommend having some boundaries, just because it can be really, really hard if you fall in love with the person or catch feelings for them or something like that, because, you know, in a friends with benefits relationship, there's not going to be a lot of closeness. There's not going to be exclusivity. So it can be hard knowing that you are not the only person in that person's life, and falling in love with someone can be really difficult. So I think the thing out of this article that is the best advice is by creating a very strict set of rules. So to avoid commitment, it would be smart to don't have expectations, have a time frame for the relationship. So for example, say we are going to be friends with benefits for 3 months, and after that, you know, we're going to stop having sexual contact with each other. You know, don't talk on the phone often. You can limit that to maybe like 2 hours a day or something, or only a few texts a day or something like that. Keep other friends out of the relationship. No pillow talk, no sleeping over, and no romancing with the partner. So some of these things are going to help you not fall in love with the person, because you might not want to fall in love with the person, but if you're spending a lot of time with that person, if both of you are affectionate to that person and you're talking all the time, it's going to be hard not to fall in love with them, because if you're already sexually attracted to them, if you're already friends with them and you have that emotional attachment, because you have a friends with benefits relationship, if you add all of those other things to it, it's going to be really hard not to fall in love with the person, not to catch feelings for the person. So especially, at least for me, it would be hard to do that. So by making sure you have some boundaries in place and some rules that you have both discussed ahead of time, that might be a really smart decision to do to protect yourself, to protect your heart. And if you have a set time frame, you know that this is something that is not going to last. And because a friends with benefits is so you can have that sexual experience while not having, you know, a romantic relationship right now. I mean, that's the whole point. If you want to stay single, but you still want to be sexually satisfied, a friends with benefits could be a good option, but it's really important to have those rules set in place. Now, this guy who wrote the article, which is, let me find the title. It was posted on Psychology Today and is called Friends with Benefits, Sex is the Icing on the Cake of Friendship. Now, he kind of talks down on friends with benefits, like he doesn't really agree with it, that it doesn't really work all the time. But I feel like if you put the set rules to the relationship and you have boundaries in the relationship, and you know that you don't go in with any expectations, and you know that you're going in just so you can have, a sexual partner, then I don't see why it wouldn't work. As long as both of you are in the same agreement and you have those boundaries. So he kind of doesn't really agree with that they can work, but I think as someone who is in their 20s, who would be the demographic who's most likely to use the friends with benefits, it can work if you're smart about it. So yeah, I don't know. He just doesn't seem like he's a big fan. And I did find him, this article was posted in 2011. He also posted an article on July 2nd of this year, and it pretty much talks about the same thing. In fact, he still uses the same advice about boundaries in this article as well. It looks like it was copied and pasted. So yeah, I don't know if he's a huge fan about friends with benefits relationships, but according to his picture, he looks like he is someone who isn't in his 20s and probably doesn't experience it or has a lot of friends who do have friends with benefits relationship. And as long as it's something that's working for you at this time in your life, I don't see why not. If you're someone who does get emotionally attached easily, I would highly, highly, highly recommend putting in these boundaries. And I think that is the one thing that I did really gain from this article, was having boundaries in a friends with benefits relationship. So if anything, take that and move on from there. So anyway, in the next segment, I'm going to be talking about if two people of the opposite sex or two people who are sexually attracted to that gender can be friends. Spoiler alert, I believe they can be. But who am I? I'm not a psychologist. I don't know. But we'll be talking about that in the next segment. We are going to take a quick sponsor break, but we'll be right back.
The GSMC Sex Podcast is a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet. Download the GSMC Sex Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you can find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. So in this segment, I'm going to be talking a little bit about how if people can be just friends. Now, as someone who is a bisexual, it makes me laugh when I see people who say, or I read articles that say that people of the opposite sex can't be friends. Because listen, I'm attracted to women, but I have women friends and female presenting friends. And tell you what, I have a very distinctive, it's like, as someone who's bisexual, you don't want to go around having sex with everyone all the time. And you're able to distinguish, friends from, potential romantic relationships. But I still see all of these articles saying that men and women who are heterosexual can't be men. And sure, there's going to be sexual tension, and maybe someone is going to be more attached than the other person. But you know what? I am the type of person who thinks that it's important to have crushes. Now, crushes are fun because it's like crushes allow you to, do things and get excited for something. So let's say if you have a crush in a class or you have a crush at work or something. Now you are more excited to go to work that day or go to class that day so you can see your crush. Now I use crushes to my advantage that way. And so can you. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be friends with someone who is the opposite sex as you. Now I have crushes on my friends, but I feel like I'm able to I don't know, make a difference between sexual attraction and just a crush. Now, because I admire people's talents, I admire people's personalities, and I feel like everyone else can do that. But there are a bunch of articles that out there that say that men and women, specifically heterosexual men and women, can't be friends. And I feel like you can still be friends. And here are some ways that you can be friends with your opposite sex or sex of your attraction. And you can do that by practicing healthy boundaries. Now, kind of like what we said before in the last segment with the Friends with Benefits segment. As long as you have boundaries that, maybe you're not talking like all day, every day, if you're not texting all day, every day, if you're not hanging out every day, you're probably going to get attached to that person if you're spending a lot of time with each other, because attraction has to do with proximity. Now, people like to talk about soulmates and things like that. And sure, if you believe in soulmates, but the thing with soulmates is the person, there's 8 billion people in the world. So I feel like there's going to be more than one soulmate for you. And also your soulmate, let's say the most compatible person that could have ever lived. And also that's the other thing. So is a soulmate going to be someone in the past or someone in the future? Like maybe your soulmate has already lived and passed away. And also your soulmate could be someone who lives in India or Russia or somewhere that you're never going to be, or is so far removed, or has a language barrier. Now, really, that isn't your soulmate. They could be completely compatible for you. But attraction has to do with proximity. So if you're spending a lot of time with that person, if you're talking to them all the time, if you're always hanging out, you're more likely to fall in love with the other person because you're spending so much time with them. And so because of that, it is very important to have boundaries with someone who you feel like you may fall in love with, I guess. And it's also important to be extremely clear around the motivation for your friendship. Now, it's okay to have a very attractive friend, but if the motivation is purely platonic, that's awesome. But if not, you need to be honest with yourself that you are attracted to this person. So it doesn't mean that you can't have a friendship with them, but you need to acknowledge your attraction that you feel for them. And this will hopefully help you limit some of the sticky situations you might find yourself in if you do start liking them. So if you tell yourself ahead of time, yes, I'm attracted to this person in my friend group or this person that I'm friends with or whatever, that's important. But kind of knowing that and accepting that is going to help you be able to be just friends with them. The next thing is don't entertain flirtatious behavior. So whether you're a man or a woman, straight or gay or whatever, it's really important to kind of shut down flirtatious stuff. Because I feel like if you're not comfortable with that sort of thing and one of your friends starts, flirting with you, it's important to not, lead them on and not accept those flirtations, but kind of just shut them down while they begin. I feel like, unfortunately, you might run into problems where you might lose them as a friend. But if you're not looking for a relationship with them and they start flirting with you, and then they don't want to be friends with you after that, I feel like that wasn't a very strong friendship begin with, especially if you're looking for simply a platonic friendship. And I feel like this may happen a lot to people who are asexual or aromantic. So those are people who have no desire to be sexual or have no desire to have a romantic relationship. And I feel like that they may, as someone who is not asexual, so if you are, please DM me, and or if you're comfortable with that, and so maybe I can have you on the podcast so we can talk about that, if you're comfortable, of course. But yeah, I mean, I feel like people are going to, you might make friends with people and not have any sort of sexual attraction to them, but the other person may have a lot of sexual attraction towards you, but you don't want that kind of relationship, and that isn't really your thing. And I mean, I'm sure that happens a lot to other people, and I think it's also important to talk about for everyone. I feel like there is a spectrum. So some people are going to be more sexual than other people. Some people are going to be less romantic than other people. And some people are going to, it's kind of like the Kinsey Scale. Now, if you haven't heard about it, the Kinsey Scale allows you to kind of quiz yourself to see where you fall. Like either 100% gay, 100% straight, or maybe like 70% gay, 70% straight, whatever it is. So some people are going to fall on a spectrum. Now, the same thing goes for asexuality and if you're aromantic. Now, you may feel that your friends are more sexual than you, or you're more sexual than your friends. And so I feel like having a friend of a sex that you're attracted to, if that's possible, it probably has a lot to do on your level of sexuality, your level of romanticity, if that's a word. But I still think it's possible, especially if you're in a large group of friends. I don't see why you couldn't do that. But yeah, I think the main thing is to have boundaries. So boundaries are always going to be important for that kind of thing. And always communicate and things like that. But I feel like you can still be friends with someone of the opposite sex. And it might be easier to hang out in a group of people if you are someone who falls in love a little bit easier or catches feelings easier. If you don't want to do that with the people in your friend group that is a gender that you're attracted to. And know that if you hang out with them in a big group, you are less likely to focus in on just them and develop feelings for only them. So instead of thinking about that person after a friend date with a group of all of your friends together, you kind of associate the enjoying time with not only them, but all of your other friends around them, instead of associating this really romantic time that you had, or how similar you guys are and how good you would be together. If you do want to just keep that friendship. And for me too, I have had experiences where if I do catch feelings, I will tell the person straight up, like, hey, listen, I don't feel the same as I did before. In fact, I like you a little bit more. So let's kind of just cut things off. And then once I cut things off, I start to notice how incompatible we are. So if you find yourself that you do catch feelings with someone of a sex that you're attracted to, kind of just be honest with yourself, be honest with them, and say like, hey, I would like to create a little bit more boundaries and step away from the relationship for a little bit so I can come back better and and know that we're only friends. So if it helps, step away from the relationship, remove yourself a little bit from the relationship. So, and 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to realize that you guys are really not a great match to begin with. And I think the problem comes when there are blurred lines, when there's a lot of flirting going on, when there's a lot of sexual tension. And you can avoid that by communicating, having good boundaries, and not spending every waking moment texting them, talking to them, hanging out with them. all of that fun stuff is really important to avoid if you don't want to fall in love with your friends constantly. And I feel like I did talk about that a little bit in one episode. I can't remember which episode it was, but it was a really great article about a woman who just falls in love with her friends, and then they never really feel the same about her. So yeah, I think it's definitely important to create those boundaries and to create some protection for yourself and your heart. But I think that, men and women, heterosexual men and women, or a gender that you're attracted to can still be friends. You just got to be careful. Same thing with the friends with benefits thing too. So yeah, just kind of be kind with yourself, be patient with yourself, and be honest with yourself is the biggest advice that I can give you for that kind of thing. It has started pouring, so you can probably hear the rain in the background, but I did want to talk about, too, sometimes it can be really hard developing friendships as an adult, too. When we're in school, it's easy for us to meet new people. When we're young, we do all of these other things, and then, when you grow up and you get out of college, you're not meeting as many people. And so when you do meet people, especially of the opposite sex, and maybe you're single, it's hard to, keep them at a friend's distance. And, it can be hard meeting people who are outside of your job, maybe, or who are outside, who maybe have the same, interests as you, and it can be hard developing a real friendship when you're an adult. So something I actually am going to talk about in the next segment is the importance of adult friendships and how to develop friendships as an adult. And whatever your sexual orientation is, it can be hard staying friends with them and avoiding the sexual tension and avoiding, falling in love with that person. But I feel like if you do have a larger friend group and you put yourself out there more, you're more likely to meet people who are not only good candidates for having a very solid friendship, but maybe then you can meet someone who could be a romantic interest. And, then you don't have to fall in love with all of your friends. So that is something that we are going to be talking about in the next segment. But first, we are going to pause for a quick sponsor break. So we'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
back. So in this segment, I wanted to talk about friendship, because sometimes making friends as an adult can be really hard. So far I've talked about friends with benefits and, can people of the opposite sex that they're both attracted to be friends? Well, in this one, I'm going to be talking about just how can you even make platonic friends. So this one for me is, so some history about myself. I went to a community college right out of high school. I went there because I had a scholarship for free tuition, and I wanted to go somewhere for the first 2 years of my college life that was going to be cheaper. And I'm glad I did it because I have a significantly less student loans than a lot of my friends from college I know. But I commuted, and commuting to a community college wasn't that big of a deal, only because a lot of people commuted. But yeah, so I went there for 2 years, and it was 50 minutes away from my house, and I had classes in the morning, and then I was a theater kid, so I did shows at night. I think I've actually talked about this before, but in the beginning, it was extremely lonely because for the first, in the afternoons, I was by myself all the time. It was really hard for me to meet people because I didn't live on campus, but because I did shows, I got to develop a lot of good relationships with people and meet people, and eventually I made friends and I was good. But then I transferred to a 4-year university. I went to SUNY Fredonia for my bachelor's degree. People who are outside New York probably have never heard of this school because some people who are even in the state of New York, don't really understand SUNY Fredonia because there are state schools and they're all within the same system, which is the SUNY system, State University of New York. There's also City Universities of New York, which is CUNY, and those are more downstate in Manhattan. But, so Fredonia is all the way, on the western New York, south of Buffalo. And so I went there, and so I felt just incredibly lonely. Not only was I a transfer student, but I also commuted because, Fredonia is only 30 minutes away from me. So I didn't want to spend the money to live on campus. And it was really hard for me because I went there as an acting major. I got my BFA in acting with a minor in communication. And so for my acting major, I was taking the 101 acting classes with all of the other freshman acting majors. But it was really hard for me because the program in New York, or at Fredonia, is as a freshman, it's a residential college. So what that means is if you are a freshman, so if you're coming in with less than a certain amount of credits, which I was exempted from that because I was coming in with an associate's degree, so I had more credits, I wasn't considered a freshman. You had to live on campus, so you had to live in the dorms. So all of the people who I was in class with were going to college for the first time. They all lived on campus, and it was really, really hard for me to meet people. I felt really, really lonely. It was at this point that I got diagnosed with depression about a year later. It was really tough for me. And looking back now, it was hard for me to make friends because when I got there, I was a transfer student. Everyone already had their group. And it was even harder for me because I didn't live on campus. I lived 30 minutes away. So I drove home every day, so I didn't go to, the house parties and the college parties that they had. So I was like, I need to meet people. I'm a very extroverted person. I have to go out and have these do something. So I'm a dancer, and I decided to join the audition, more like the Fredonia dance team. So they performed at basketball teams and everything. And my first year I got in, so I was technically considered a junior at the time. But, you know, it was weird because in my major, I was a freshman. And so if for an acting major, I was a freshman, sophomore, and then I grouped together my junior, my senior year. So I was at Fredonia for a total of 3 years, and I was actually on the dance team for 3 years. And my first year was really quiet, because it was my first year and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know, like, anybody on the team, and I was a new face, and it was really tough for me. And then the second year, I auditioned again and I got in. And I think this is when I started to really make friends on the team. And, you know, it was really beneficial for me. But now I'm out of college. And again, it's really hard. I find it's really hard to, like, make friends. And especially now, like, all of my friends from dance team and all of my friends from college that I made, because I did make a lot of friends in my major. One of my best friends lives in California. I have friends who live in Long Island. I have friends who live an hour away from me. So it's really hard for me to make friends now. And there's actually a really nice article that does talk about making friends as an adult. And it is on Psychology Today, as usual. I love me a Psychology Today article called The Secret to Making Friends as an Adult. And it's by Marissa Franco. She's a PhD. She's written a couple books, and she's done research on friendship and things like that. So I really like her stuff from what I've read. And a really important thing to keep in mind that basically she points out that one study found that believing that friendship happens based on luck was related to more loneliness 5 years later, whereas believing that friendship takes effort was related to less loneliness. So basically, the people who believed making friends took effort put the effort in, and people who didn't believe in that didn't put the effort in, and so it was harder for them to make friends. And those people who didn't put the effort in, it was kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if they believed that making friends is based on luck, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, so that they would just hope that a friendship would happen naturally and just occur. And those are the people who are less likely to build relationships. Also, they did another study where they examined classmates' perceptions of the social environment in their classroom and asked them, was it welcoming or unwelcoming? And the people in the same class, they're different people all perceived it in a different way. So those who engaged with others regarded it as friendly, whereas those who kept to themselves saw it as unwelcoming. So basically, what you put into the world is going to be what you get back. So if you engage with people and strangers and put yourself out there, you are more likely to find friends and you're more likely to develop relationships with other people. Where if you don't, basically kind of, I guess, treat others the way you want to be treated. If you don't talk to anyone, if you're not approachable, if you don't engage in conversation, it's going to be harder for you to make friends. But they did one study. So if you're someone who is an introvert and it's really hard for you to overcome that social anxiety, just showing up can sometimes lead to friendships. So there was another study that showed they basically planted strangers in a college class. They used a varying number of classes to account for any controls or weird variables. And the other thing to keep in mind is that these strangers didn't interact with anyone in the classroom. So all of the strangers were the same in each classroom. So basically, the students that showed up more regularly, the strangers that showed up regularly, the students' likability ratings were 20% higher for the stranger who showed up to class the most compared to those strangers who showed up to the classes the least. So even if you're someone who's really uncomfortable with socializing and have a lot of social anxiety and may not be the most extroverted person out there, by just showing up, sometimes it can really help your likability ratings, and people are more likely to talk to you if you're a familiar face. So if you want to put yourself out there, if you want to join a club, or if you want to join a class, by you just showing up regularly to all of the classes, you are going to have a higher chance of being liked by the people around you than if you show up maybe once a month. That being said, it's really important to not judge a new club or class based on your impressions during the very first meeting, because everyone is going to be threatened by the unfamiliar characters in the class. So if you keep showing up, just keep showing up and then go from there. Try to decide if that's something for you. But show up regularly, and because the first time, if you hate the class and you don't really like the people in there, and if you feel everyone in the class is really like closed off, try to go a few more times, because everyone is going through the same thing that you're going through, and everyone is going to feel a little bit overwhelmed at first. If you think that a group might be cliquey or a club might be a little bit too closed off, examine if you have tried to talk to them. Because going back to what I talked about, treat others the way you want to be treated, have you tried to approach a group or approach a group of friends or try to talk to them? Because if you have and you've been denied or blocked or whatever, or rejected by the group of people, that is coming from a place of truth, and you can understand that. But if you, have never even tried to talk to these people, it's probably because, they might feel unwelcoming because you haven't tried to approach them or haven't tried to talk to them. And if you are giving off a sort of personality that you might not want to talk to someone, they aren't going to talk to you. Now, I use this in my everyday life. Is sometimes when I go out in public, I am someone who really likes, that coffee house culture, I guess you'd say. But I like to work. I'm a very extroverted person, so I like to work around people, and I like to work around a lot of energy. It helps me focus a little bit more, I think. But I just like being around other people. So sometimes what I do, but I will go to a coffee house by myself, and if there's someone I know who sees me, it's really hard for me to stop what I'm doing and talk to them, because then I'll talk to them for, an hour and not get any of my work done. So what I do is I put headphones in, even if I'm not listening to anything. I sit in a corner that is away from people, and that is going to give off a sense that, I don't really want to talk to people. So people are less likely to approach me. Now, you can use that in the same situation to make friends. If you put yourself out there, if you pay attention to your body language, if you uncross your arms, if you sit in a place that is going to be where more people are that more traffic is going to be, you're more likely to strike up a conversation with someone and make more friends. If you are someone who wants to meet people, if you want to put yourself out there, examine how you look to a stranger. Do I look like someone who wants to be talked to right now? Or do I look like someone who maybe doesn't want to be bothered? So if you want to make friends with someone, a group or something, and you think that they might be too cliquey, oh my goodness, examine if you have even tried to communicate with them. Because if you haven't, maybe the reason why they haven't tried to talk to you or haven't invited you into their group is because they may think that you don't want to be talked to. So yes, that is going to be this segment. In the next segment, I'm going to talk about relationship green flags. Everyone talks about relationship red flags and what to avoid, but here are some things that are really good if they start happening in the relationship, especially a new relationship. If these things are happening, these are green flags to pay attention to. We are going to pause for a quick break, but then we'll be right back.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. So in this segment, we're going to be talking about relationship green flags. So the first one is going to be communication skills. So if you've just dated someone and they're very, they are expressive and they know how to talk with you and communicate with you in a healthy way, that is going to be a big green flag. So do they know how to express themselves? Do they know how to communicate? This goes for in the bedroom and what they want out of the relationship. So basically, if they can communicate with you on all levels. The second one is going to be that their actions will match their words. So if they tell you that they love you, are their actions showing them that? Do they tell you that, they're not talking to anyone else? Are their actions matching that? Like, is Tinder still on their phone? Are they, do their actions match their words? So if they're telling you one thing but doing something else, that is not a green flag. But if they are telling you things and their actions are matching their words and you trust them, and by them doing that, it's building trust, big green flag. So number 3, they ask about your opinions and your needs. This is really important because I have gone on dates with people who just will not give you any room to talk. They aren't asking about your needs. You can't get a single word in. It's just about them all the time. Or you tell them and they just completely ignore your needs. So if they're just ignoring what you need, even after you've told them, not a good sign. So you want someone who's not only going to ask for your needs and for your opinions, what you want in the relationship, but they also follow through on that. Again, going back to actions matching their words. The other thing is, you can use this to compare this to your partner, but if you find that I see this sometimes where it's like, oh, am I the toxic person in the relationship? See if you can kind of adopt these green flags and put them in for the next person that you're with, and use them. So if you think you need to get better communication skills, work on that. Work on that with your family, work on that with your friends, get a counselor or a therapist to see if they can help that with, work on that with you. Anything that you can do to better your green flags so you can attract people who are going to be healthy and also have green flags, and you're just going to have a better relationship overall. So moving on to number 4, they have close family and friends. This is another big thing where if they have a good family, if they have a good, solid relationship with their friends, especially if they have friends that they've had for a long time, that's going to show that they can have relationships and that they are able to create relationships with other people. And because if they don't have any friends or if they don't have good relationships with their family, unless their family is like really toxic or something that their family has issues that people in their family family hasn't addressed, that's a different story. But if they have friends that are healthy, and they are able to continue a good relationship with other people, that means that they are going to have be able to have the capacity to create a relationship with you. On the other end, if they don't have good relationships with others, that probably means that they might be toxic or have very toxic traits that pushes people away if other people don't want to hang out with them and don't want to be with them. Because if people don't like them, they're not going to have a good relationship with them. So if they have close friends, if they have good relationships with their family, that's going to be a big green flag because they're able to continue relationships long term and develop healthy relationships long term. Now, a good way to address that situation too, if you enjoy hanging out with their family and friends. So they might have relationships with their friends, but then you meet their friends and you're like, oh my gosh, their friends are crazy. Birds of the same feather flock together. So if you meet their friends and you're like, oh my goodness, that is going to reflect what your partner looks for, and what your partner, feels like they are. So if you don't like their friends, and their friends are very rude and not that great of people, it's going to show, how their personality is. Because, for a lot of people, I kind of talked about this a little bit in the love bombing episode, there are going to be narcissists, and manipulators who are very, very good at hiding their personality. And when they get close to you, that's when the real personality is going to rear its ugly head. And you're going to be like, who is this person? Where did they come from? A really good way to figure all of this out before you get very attached to them is figure out what their friends are like and what their family is like. I don't like to compare their family too much because you can choose your friends, you can't choose their family. So there are people who have very unhealthy families who are not very supportive. So I wouldn't use family as much, but if you feel like you need to do that, then absolutely. But like I said, you can choose your friends, you can't choose your family. So if they are choosing to hang out with people who maybe aren't the best people, I would definitely take that into account because they are, accepting that behavior and willingly will hang out with their friends, whereas family, not so much. That's a little bit harder to do. The next thing is very big. So willingness to admit to being wrong. Now, if somebody can't do this is a big sign that they're a narcissist. So they need to admit to their actions when they are wrong. If they mess up, they need to be able to at least want to fix it, want to fix themselves. This is going to be big if, all of my exes are crazy. Now, as soon as I hear that, I start, there are little alarms that go off in my head. If all of your exes are crazy, you either attract crazy or you bring out the crazy in them. Unless you experience the crazy ex firsthand, I feel like this is definitely a different story. So I have had exes who tried to add my current partner like on Facebook or on Snapchat, or they like leave stuff on my car or stuff like that. And I've had people that I'm with see that. They can kind of be like, oh, this is a different story, So I think unless you experience the crazy ex firsthand, that's a different story. But if all of their exes are crazy, and, I would say that would probably be a big red flag. And the next one is going to be consistency. So is their personality consistent? Are their actions consistent? Is their humor consistent? Again, this is going to go a little bit back to love bombing and not having healthy relationships and a healthy personality. Consistency is going to be a big key. Now, do you text them and then everything's going great and you're talking to them every day and blah, 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 and then all of a sudden they just fall off the face of the earth? Now, that isn't very consistent. So if they are consistent with their feelings and if they're consistent with you, that's a very big green flag. So that's good. The next one is going to be self-awareness. This is very big. Self-awareness in their emotions, self-awareness in their actions. Are they just self-aware? Do they understand how their emotions work? Do they have a high emotional IQ? That's another episode that I've done too that you can go back in the feed and listen to. So if they're someone who understands how they work, they are just going to be a little bit more emotional intelligent, and be able to be aware of how their feelings and how their actions affect you. And you need someone who is going to be self-aware, because if they just do things on impulse and then they don't realize how they affect you, that's going to be pretty unhealthy and not a very good relationship to have. So if the person has self-awareness and are aware of how their actions affect others, and also are aware of their emotions, or at least willing to work on their self-awareness, that's going to be a good green flag. And then the next one, number 9, is, you don't feel like you need to hide things from them. So if you find yourself, feeling like you need to lie, or feeling that you need to hide stuff from them to avoid them getting angry, that's going to be something that you should probably examine. Now, that can also come from inside. So there are a lot of people who grew up with, again, talking about a previous topic, different attachment styles. Now, if you grew up with maybe a helicopter parent, you might have the impulse to hide things from other people, for fear of rejection and for fear of not being loved. That's something that you're going to have to work on yourself, but, examine that feeling. Why are you hiding? Why do you feel the need to hide things? Is it coming from yourself, or is it coming from the proof of the other person? So does the other person make you feel uncomfortable? Does the other person make you feel like you need to hide things about your personality or hide things about your life? Or is it something that comes from inside? Something that you feel like if you talk to this person about it, will you not be lovable anymore? Or something else. So my biggest advice for everything, is to be in the moment with your feelings, and to examine your feelings in the moment and be present with how you feel. That's my biggest piece of advice. And the last one is, do they treat you and others with respect? The easiest way to figure out if this is true is how they treat people who work in the service industry. So people who are waiters or waitresses, people who are serving them, do they tip? Like things like that. I feel like this is the easiest way to tell if someone is going to treat you and others with respect. Now, if they treat the waiter or waitress or the bartender like absolute garbage, then they don't really have respect for people and the people around them. If they can't treat, the person who's serving them with respect, how are they going to treat everyone else around them with respect? I think that's the easiest way to tell, somebody. And also how they treat their parents. If they just treat them like absolute garbage and they don't give them any respect, how are they going to treat you with respect? Because they never learned how to treat others with respect. Again, you can see my thing. I've talked about family members beforehand. You can't, pick them, but I feel like just because you might not have a healthy relationship with your parents, respect is earned. But I don't know. I don't have a fantastic relationship with my biological mom, but, I still treat her with respect. I just have boundaries in that relationship. You can still treat people with respect and have boundaries. So as, take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, so that is going to conclude the podcast. I really hoped you enjoyed it. Sorry about the weird sound going on in the background. We had a thunderstorm in the middle of recording. It's been a hot day. It's cooled down a little bit, thank God. But yeah, so I'm emailing some sex therapists and relationship therapists I really hope that I can get someone on the podcast to interview who work in therapy and who have degrees and who I can talk to who specialize in sex and in relationships. So if you or someone you know has that degree or has that experience and is currently working as a sex or relationship therapist, please contact me. I am emailing people in my area, so people in the Buffalo, New York area. But, I'm hoping that some people get back to me. So I'm hoping that I can have someone on the podcast and interview instead of me just talking and have somebody else on the podcast as well. But yeah, so if you feel like you're someone with those who works in that discipline, please contact me because I'd love to talk to you and I'd love to learn more about healthy relationships and healthy sexual relationships and everything like that underneath the sun. As always, please give us a like on Instagram, Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Currently, I think there are 55 ratings on iTunes and no reviews. I would love if that were to change. So please, it only takes like a few seconds. Rate and review us on Apple iTunes. It would mean so much to me and I would love it. And yeah, please DM me on the Instagram GSMC_relationship if you're someone who feels like you have something to offer on the podcast. It doesn't even have to be like a sex therapist. If you have experience in relationships or if you feel like you'd like to talk about it, if you're someone who is in the queer community, like if you're asexual or aromantic, I'd love to interview. So yeah, just let me know, DM me. But anyway, guys, I will talk to you later and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Have a good one. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.